introduce the orator of today's oration, Professor Ashok Sahai. He has been an alumnus of this institute who climbed the ranks to head of the department for a long time. A gentle soul, he believed in working quietly without clamoring for appreciation and awards. He was instrumental in preparing the prospectuses for various medical colleges, was a reviewer of 40th edition of Gray's Anatomy, member of the South Asian Advisory Board of Walters Kluwer and Lippincott, Williams and Wilkins. He was also the first controller of examination of KGMU, faculty in charge of MCI, DCI, UGC cell, and got KGMU recognized and enlisted by the University Grants Commission. Recognizing his all-round extraordinary services to the Anatomical Society of India since 1975, he was conferred with Fellowship of the Society and was awarded the prestigious Dr. Shamir Singh Memorial Oration of ASI in 2022. At present, he is serving the people at large as honorary physician in the Saran Ashram Hospital, Dayalbagh, Agra, and is working as honorary professor of anatomy in Dayalbagh Educational Institute, Faculty of Integrated Medicine at Dayalbagh, Ayush. Now I request Professor Ashok Sahai to deliver the oration.
So, at the outset, I thank the Department of Anatomy, King George's Medical University, Lucknow, under the able leadership of Professor Punita Manik and her team of very dedicated faculty and residents, that you have chosen me to deliver this oration today. I am very proud that I am giving this oration to honor Professor A.C. Das and Professor Halim Sahab, both of whom have been my teacher and head of the departments. So my 48 years of journey here in this institution. So the term mirror neuron, these two words, mirror neuron, hidden under these two words is a landmark discovery of 20th century in the neuroscience, which has decoded a lot of mental attributes and evolved in the form of life of animals, reaching their zenith in the human beings, making us very different from the other animals. So this discovery is being presented in the honor of both my teachers. So taking you to the journey of these two words, mirror, neuron. To prime you first about the mirror neuron, since good old days we have seen that we get so emotionally involved when you are seeing a match, a sport, which is a high speed action, and get often so much involved that when the player is about to shoot into the goal, our foot also moves. It happens. Two different animals, a lion and a pup, monkey pup. Monkey pup will never dare to come close to the lion, and lion will not leave the monkey pup like this. But both understand the intention of each other, and the pup is very quietly and very peacefully, very comfortably is patting on the head of the lion as if nothing wrong is going to happen. The intention reading is there in the human beings also. A boy and a girl meets. In the first or second meet, both try to understand each other. Why are we meeting? Why is this fellow meeting? Or why is this girl meeting? We come to understand the intention behind the meet. Mind reading, another attribute of the human brain. You go to a sadhu or a tantric or something like that with something in mind, and as you reach there, he knows for what you have come for and will tell you the reason and the answer of something which is going into your brain. He is able to read your mind. A child during the first year in the infancy, the child looks at your facial expressions, tries to imitate, and with this imitation, the language evolves. Observation, which is one of the key factors in the learning, any skill. Maybe it's a surgical skill, maybe it's a diagnostic skill, maybe it's sports, maybe it is music, or maybe any other, say for example, arts. So any skill which you wish to learn, you first observe, then you perform with assistance, then you perform without assistance. That is the sequence. So initial is observation. Two more very practical examples of mind reading. One is this policeman interrogating an outlaw. It's an interrogating an outlaw. Outlaw will tell something. He will ask something. Outlaw will tell something. But police is trained to understand that if this confession of the outlaw is reliable or not. So has to read the mind whether he's speaking the truth or it is a cooked story. Similarly, if you are playing a card in a group and money is at stake, then you try to see into the eyes of the person and the players in front of you, and you try to decide whether I should make another move or I should back off. You read the mind. Those who are able to do it, they win the game. Those who are not able to do it, they invariably lose the game. So there are countless examples. I've given you some of them. Now, about the brain, people have knowledge since good old days. Thereafter, experiments started. Neuroscientists, neurophysicians, behavior scientists, cognitive scientists, computer engineers, with the help of the neuronal wiring of the neurons which they create artificially, then Reiki, hypnosis, tantric, they have all contributed to some form of functional information on the brain. And they know how to control your brain, and they know how to make you see, listen, and do what they want. Now later, information about the brain has come from simple observations, the dissection, microscopy of different types, including the light microscopy, electron microscopy, and advanced imaging techniques like MRI, fMRI, the PET scan, and so on. Then the experiments on the electrical recording of the neurons. This came very late because it was not ethically possible to put an electrode into the brain of any person without consent and take the recordings of a single neuron or multiple neurons. So, with all that, a lot of knowledge continued to accumulate with the passage of time. The answer for a lot of how and why got the answer with the discovery of the mirror neurons. The mirror neurons, initially, when you hear for the first time, you just wonder that mirror and neuron, how do they go together? Looking into the mirror or something else. So the concept is something else, it's a functional concept. They are also called as visual neurons, canonian neurons, monkey see and monkey do neurons. These are all synonyms. So what are these? The initial definition has been that mirror neuron is a neuron in the brain which fires both when an animal performs an action and when the other animal is seeing that action being performed. So the same neuron in both the animals, they fire together. So in one, it's a motor action, because of motor action is performing some action, and the other person and the other animal or the person who is observing this action being performed, here also same neurons start firing. That is the concept of mirror neuron which initially came. Here, this man has taken up something from the bowl and is eating. The monkey is very carefully just observing this person doing this act. So, motor activity being performed in A, and the neurons which are responsible for the performance of that activity fire. But in this animal who is observing this action being performed, same neurons start firing in this animal too. This discovery of mirror neuron, it has been a landmark discovery in the neurobiology of the 20th century. This is what V.S. Ramchandran, the great neurophysician and neurologist, has written in its book, The Telltale Brain, one of the most widely read book in neurophysiology. So the timeline of this discovery is very interesting. Giacomo Rizzolatti, he is an Italian neurophysician working in the University of Parma. He was a matchless celebrity of his time in the neurophysiology. It is the University of Parma where he was working. He had a team of Pellegrino, Fadiga, Fogasis and Gallicin. So they continued to perform experiments on the macaque monkey, the macaque mulata, right from 1980 to 1990. And they observed that while the monkey saw this person holding an object and picking it up from a plate, the neurons in the monkey also fire, and monkey starts repeating the similar action. This was the initial experiment. So while this experiment was done, further after this observation, the experiments continued, and the electrode was placed in the area F5 in the macaque monkey, which corresponds to the Broca's area, and the neurons were studied. The research team recorded the response of multiple neurons and single neurons during each experiment and found that these mirror neurons are located in macaque monkey at 3 places, that is area F5, Broca's area, inferior parietal lobule and anterior cingulum. The discovery was then sent to the journal Nature Neuroscience for its publication, but he was not a very big celebrity in neuroscience, Rizzolatti, so it was not published for many reasons. Later, the same discovery was sent in the Experimental Brain Research in 1992 and got published. Once, this is the abstract of the publication which we have. After this publication, there was a wildfire that what these mirror neurons are. What is this? What are these words? And let us start experimenting what Rizzolatti and his team has got published. From monkey, they came to the humans. The first human experiment which examined the involvement of the mirror neurons in the hand muscle twitchings, it was published. It was published in the Journal of Neurophysiology in 1995. But in the humans, the single neuron recording could not be done. It could not be done because of the ethical problems, but this opened the door that for a large scale research on the mirror neurons in the human beings. There are two more famous neuroscientists who have, besides Rizzolatti, who have worked relentlessly on the mirror neurons. One is Icoboni from California, Glasser from London, University College of London, and Christian Kessler from Netherlands, Amsterdam. They have worked relentlessly. In the human beings, the initial evidence, which was clinical, like imitation, mind reading, intention reading, mimicry, skill learning, motor activity while viewing sports. Later the evidence came, fMRI was used, and the mirror neurons could be identified in the fMRI studies also. Then in 2010, Mukamil, this was a landmark scientific work in the realm of mirror neuron, recorded the single neuron activity of 21 patients of epilepsy with consent. He got the consent in the Ronald Reagan Medical Center, inserting intracranial deep micro electrodes with consent. As the information accumulated, it was gradually found that mirror neurons in the human brains are there at 10 different locations, like supplementary motor area, primary somatosensory, inferior parietal lobule, the angular gyrus, the medial temporal, anterior part of the cingulum, insula, and the medial surface of the temporal lobe. That's how cluster of mirror neurons were seen at these sites in the cortex, in the cerebral cortex. And it was evaluated that as many as 15 to 30% of the neurons in the cerebral cortex are mirror neurons. Now, how did these mirror neurons evolve? So, a few birds, they have been shown to have mirror neurons, and this ability to imitate and to develop a language to some extent, like parrot. You teach the parrot some words, you teach the parrot a small poem, gradually the parrot will continue to look at you on your face very carefully, and gradually parrot starts reciting that. Now, with evolution, from hominoid brain to the Homo sapiens, which has taken the present size about 2.4 million years from now, but mental attributes, they appeared much later. So there was a long period of incubation from hominid brain to the developed attributes in the human beings. Now this evolutionary biologist, Dr. Ramchandran, he has opined that around 40,000 years from now, if you go back, there has been a giant leap in the human evolution. And with that, from Stone Age, they came to development of the fire, and from fire, gradually they started covering their body. So there was a giant leap, and with this giant leap, the language also evolved. Initially, it was just sound. Now, in the language, Edward Escher discovered the FOXP2 gene in 2001. This gene evolved 4,000,000 years from now. 4 lakh years from now. But it was discovered in 2001 by Simon Edward Fisher, and he found that there are two tiny mutations, just two tiny mutations in this gene, which occurred about 40,000 years from now, and it decoded why human can speak. Now before this expression, our larynx was subcranial. There was a small space, and through this small space only sound was possible. Only sound was possible. With these two mutations, what happened? That larynx started descending, and it descended from subcranial portion to cervical 3, 4, 5. It descended. As the larynx descended, the angulation of the palate, of the pharynx, and of the laryngeal muscle changed. The larynx had more space in it, and as it was a greater space, the animals started making noises for emotional calls and musical sounds during the courtship. And that is how gradually the language evolved in the human beings, and that is the reason why the FOXP2 gene is also called as the language gene. I told you that initially in the inferior parietal lobule there has been a cluster of mirror neurons, even in good old days. As the language started evolving with the two mutations, the mirror neurons started rapidly multiplying from inferior parietal lobule, and they started migrating towards the Broca's area and the surrounding areas. And that is how is the evolution of the speech. We don't have mirror neurons in the fetal life. There is no document as such. Mirror neurons they are not there in the fetal life. Though when the child is born, child is able to imitate, give social smile. Child is able to give social smile. Child is able to give a smile that I know you, I like you smile. So, but this all happens before the age of 12 months. So there, where the mirror neurons are not described, it is said that there is an innate releasing mechanism in the neonates resulting in single gesture imitation, and that I know you smile. Mirror neurons are not documented right here. V.S. Ramchandran, also known as the Marco Polo of neuroscience, also known as the Paul Broca, modern Paul Broca, he has predicted that the mirror neurons will do for the cognitive neurobiology what DNA has done for biology. Now this mirror neuron is a functional concept. I'll tell you why at a later stage. They are involved in the learning facilitation, empathy, self-awareness, language, intention reading, imitation, mind reading, mimicry, recruit other areas of the brain which are available for some other act. Then phantom limb understanding has come from the mirror neuron. The concept of phantom limb understanding and phantom pain. The autism has been now established in neuroscience much more than it was understood earlier, because in autism it has been found that the mirror neuron system is broken and cerebral cortex is though thin, but the overall mirror neurons are deficient. Their synapses with other neurons are also functionally very poor. Mirror neurons in females in particular for intention reading, empathy, interpretive sensitivity and emotional recognition, females' mirror neurons perform much better than that of male mirror neurons. Then this concept of self-awareness, from where the process of meditation starts. You invert the flow of current through the mirror neurons and try to realize the self-awareness. And from self-awareness, when you have turned inwards, to create second order representation or meta representation, you try to perceive the metaphysical part of this world. So self-awareness is another phenomena where mirror neurons are involved. When the mirror neurons are broken, they are functionally broken, or structurally they are less in number, speech defects do occur, the developmental disorder of the speech, autism is there, psychopaths have broken mirror neurons, impaired mirror neurons. In schizophrenia also mirror neurons are adversely affected. Those who lack empathy, they are unable to read mind, poor intention reading, poor skills, they remain isolated in their own world, in their own environment, which is there in the autism and some other disorders. Unable to imitate and do mimicry. These are all mirror neuron, the broken mirror neurons, which are functionally broken, or they are structurally less in number. Now in this phantom limb, you all know that sometimes the limb get amputated for any reason. Maybe it's an accident, or maybe it's a planned. There is a gangrene, and to prevent further damage to the human body, the limb is cut, maybe upper limb or lower limb. So the stump which remains after that amputation, bulletin amputation or whatever you say, that after that the patient continues to feel often that rest of the limb is there. Patients even, they complain of itching, they complain of pain in that part of the limb which now does not exist. That is the concept of phantom limb, which has been seen day in and day out. The symptoms are different. If it is a above ankle, mid leg, below knee amputation, the symptoms are different. But the patient says something, will take the hand and find that the limb is not there, but the sensation is there. That is what is the phantom limb. And in this phenomena, mirror neurons, the neurons which were supplying that area, the motor neurons and the sensory neurons which were responsible for various sensory activities and motor activities of that area, they remember the memory of when the limb was there, and that is how that memory continues to strike back, and as it continues to strike back, the patient continues to feel often those sensations in that part of the limb which is not there. Now, people have worked on the structural aspect of the neurons, and they have found structurally there is no difference. There is no difference between the mirror neurons and a typical pyramidal neuron. Structurally they are the same. And if you come to the classification of the neurons, the classification of the neurons is a very, very broad-based classification based on the polarity, based on the relative length of the nerve processes like Golgi type 1 and Golgi type 2, based on the connectivity pattern, it is monosynaptic, polysynaptic, bisynaptic, based on the functional attributes, it's a sensory neuron, it's a motor neuron, it's an interneuron, excitatory, inhibitory, like that. Based on the transmission, so electrical signals, neurons having electrical signals, neuron having the chemical signals, and secretory attributes. So I am not going deep into classification, but I am telling that there are various ways through which the neurons have been classified, and you all have this information in your textbooks of anatomy, in textbook of neuroanatomy, and if you go to the Google, you find the classification of neurons, you find there all these things, and lot will be taught to you in anatomy, physiology, and further in neurology and in the clinical medicine. There are some specialized neurons also, like that of the eye, the ear, the Purkinje neurons of the cerebellum, like that. There are about 500 different types of neurons. But The University of Queensland, in its last information given on this website, they still hold that till date there is no way to classify the huge variety of neurons that exist in the brain for any level of satisfaction. The classification still is not satisfactory. Whenever there is a discovery or an invention, the opposition also plays a role. Opposition is not there only in politics, but everywhere, in academics too. So there is a group of scientists who say that the mirror neuron is hoax. There is nothing like mirror neuron, and it's all hypothetical. It is still an open question whether mirror neurons do exist or not, but Professor Ramchandra, who is one of the pioneers in this field of neurophysiology, he has refuted all the doubts and says the mirror neurons, they are reality. They are reality. And there is another concept which sometimes you will find, anti-mirror neuron. So anti-mirror neuron is not something which is wrong. Anti-mirror neuron is reality. Anti-mirror neurons are those mirror neurons which will suppress those mirror neurons which would have otherwise got excited. That means I have done some action, the other person has seen those actions being performed, the person tries to, his similar neurons they fire, they tries to perform a similar action, but for some reason stops. For some reason stops. Means there are neurons which suppress the mirror behavior of the neurons, and they are called as anti-mirror neurons. One of the very practical examples which you will often come across, somebody humiliates you, somebody hits you, or somebody fights with you. You have a natural instinct to retaliate. But when you retaliate, you judge that the other person will be harder on me, or I will be able to overpower. If that person is going to be harder on me, your action is suppressed. You do not retaliate. And this suppression of action is the anti-mirror neuron concept which has come. कहीं हमको मार न दे, कॉलर पकड़ लिया, कॉलर छुड़वा नहीं पा रहे हैं डर के मारे कि ये कहीं पलट के हमको मार देगा तो हम क्या करेंगे. Now, there has been some injustice done to the mirror neurons, which I would like to summarize. That these neurons, which have been discovered around 43 years from now, they have been widely researched world over. They form about 15 to 30% of the total population of the neurons in the cerebrum. They provide explanation to so many mental attributes and diseases. Yet, we do not find mention of these neurons, either in the books of anatomy or in the books of neurology or neuroanatomy or neurosciences. And therefore, to conclude, I suggest that these neurons should find a place in the classification first of the neurons in the subclass of functional neurons. Mirror neurons should be added into the syllabus of MD anatomy. In various books of anatomy and neuroanatomy, mirror neurons should be adequately included, and the anatomist world over, everywhere, should try to work upon the experimental part of mirror neuron, and they should go ahead adding some more knowledge into this wide field. So, these are the references. Anybody who is interested can go through. There is a vast literature there in the mirror neurons. And I finally acknowledge Professor Prem Charan Satsangi Sahab, the chairman of the Advisory Committee on Education and my spiritual master in Dayalbagh, for giving me intuitive guidance for the preparation of this oration. To my spouse, Dr. Ashok Sahai, for bearing with me, spending countless hours when I have been preparing this oration. And to all those who have inspired me to remain academically active at this age. Thank you.